Kyle here from allmediareviews.blogspot.com, and to do another random artist feature, part 1 on Led Zeppelin. My first favorite band, although Huey Lewis and the News and some other, like the Beatles and some other bands I got into around the time before the time I liked Roxette. I liked some, there were bands, whatever, Guns N' Roses. There were bands before that I liked, but I really discovered rock music, classic rock, from Led Zeppelin. So anyway, that was in 1990. So that was 26 years ago. Led Zeppelin 1, I'm just going to do the first 4 albums. Led Zeppelin 1, great record. And I'll just say this right now before I even get into these. I view Led Zeppelin's catalog to be pretty equal. Almost every record I rate about the same. My favorite being, I'll talk about that at the end, I guess. I'll try to remember next time I do the next part. But as far as Led Zeppelin 1 though goes, it's a terrific record. I mean, that's all that I can say about it. It's blues rock, heavy blues rock, proto heavy metal, you could say, to a point. Good Times, Bad Times, radio staple, Babe I'm Gonna Leave You, a headbanger. I love the acoustic moments on that. This is the pressing I have. I think all the records I have are first or second pressings because I got them all used. You Shook Me, an odd song that I kind of view as sort of the sound of this record. They were trying to experiment. Jimmy Page was, especially with guitar echoes and stuff like that, and stuff in the studio. Not unlike a lot of bands around that period of time with Pink Floyd and the Beatles and you name it. They're just trying to use the studio as an instrument to a point. Really, it started with Revolver, or even before that, Rubber Soul. But yeah, so and then the side one ends with Dazed and Confused, which is an epic. I really do like Dazed and Confused. I've always liked the heavy riff on that and sort of the epic nature of it. It doesn't really drag on too much for me. Although I kind of am a little bit tired of a lot of people referring to that as sort of the greatest song on this record, or the greatest song in, their greatest achievement. Their heaviest song, which, I guess I can't argue that necessarily. But I want to say it's overrated, but maybe it's a little bit overrated. I guess, to quote Mr. Superior, people are idiots if they think it's the best Zeppelin song on Led Zeppelin 1 or Zeppelin in general. Anyway, side 2, which I could be wrong, but on my cassette version when I originally bought this album was on side 1. I could be wrong about that, but I just remember being the first song on the record frequently when I listened to it. Your Time Is Gonna Come. I think that's the most underrated song on this album. Black Mountain Side, Communication Breakdown got a lot of airplay. Black Mountain Side's a cool sort of acoustic piece. I Can't Quit You Baby, which that's a Willie Dixon song. They have the credits. So this isn't obviously an original pressing. I don't know if they actually printed these out before they actually had that whole legal thing that came up. And then How Many More Times, which is an epic blues. I think it's almost proggy in a lot of sense. It's really progressive rock of sorts. Little Robert Anthony wants to come and play. No, I love How Many More Times. My go-tos on this album, I guess, if I had to choose like 2 songs, I would go with How Many More Times, and probably on Babe I'm Gonna Leave You. But because again, Dazed and Confused, while I love it and I love the 32-minute or whatever version off of Song Remains the Same, How Many More Times should be the one everyone talks about. And then I would say the most underrated still remains Your Time Is Gonna Come. And Good Times, Bad Times, I would also say, is as catchy of a song as the band ever made, actually, ever recorded, ever wrote. So of course that was like 68, I think, and then 69, I think it was, Led Zeppelin II came out. Yep. And again, like I said at the beginning of the video, their catalog is pretty equal. If I had to lean toward one or the other, I might lean toward Led Zeppelin 1 over this one, but it's just a push. It's pretty much a push. This is a terrific album as well. Between Whole Lot of Love, and that song's been done. And again, like Dazed and Confused, it's been referenced a little too much for me. It's not a bad song. I still enjoy it to a point, but there are other songs on this album that deserve more recognition. I'll say this, the most underrated track on this record by far is Bring It On Home. And I used to never listen to that song. I would hate the way it sort of started with this slow ballad. I would turn the cassette off. I would fast forward to the end of the tape. I never listened to probably the first 8 months I had this album. Then one day I just listened to it finally, and the guitar part and that like the bridge basically, or what I consider the best part or the main part of the song, is tremendous. It's one of the best songs they ever did, but the best parts. That guitar riff is just heavy and just oh man, it totally kicks. You know, Thank You, terrific ballad sorts. I'll never get sick of that track. Let's see here. Ramble On, again a radio staple. Unlike Whole Lotta Love, I'm never really tired of Ramble On. I love the lyrics on Ramble On. Sort of, you know, it's referencing Lord of the Rings, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because they mentioned Gollum, the evil one. But Heartbreaker, which, yeah, I guess not. For the longest time, I always assumed Heartbreaker was an Elvis track or an interpretation of an Elvis song. But no, Heartbreaker is also one of the heaviest songs they ever did. And I always think of that with Live and Love Me. They play those on the radio back to back on classic rock, and they're good songs. I don't hate them. They're not my favorites. What Is and What Should Never Be is another underrated track. The whole sort of rhythm, the segue, the build up on that song works really well with the vocals and just the melody. The Lemon Song, which sounds a lot like Killing Floor that Jimi Hendrix did, and it's really an old blues track. They don't reference the blues artists on this. So unlike Led Zeppelin I, I don't know if this was an earlier pressing that they didn't actually have the lawsuit that affected the printing. So, and of course Moby Dick, which is the John Bonham featured instrumental, which I like, you know, and maybe John Bonham's best piece as a like a drummer, featured drummer, I suppose. You know, and I like it. I'd rather listen to it over like Whole Lotta Love or some other, especially the stuff on Led Zeppelin IV, some of those songs. But it's not a song that I, you know, think of when I think of Zeppelin right away. So yeah, so then they put in 1970, I believe it was, or 71. I think it was 70. Led Zeppelin III, and this is one of the ones that pulls out or whatever. This is the sheet, the sleeve I got this from says this was a pressing. Yeah, it was a later pressing, but it still has okay, so it's the fact that it has the pinwheel cover. But I've never actually spent the time messing with the pinwheel, so I'll try to do that real quickly right now. Led Zeppelin III is, I always think of as the acoustic Led Zeppelin, which a lot of people do, or Middle Eastern influence at times. It has a lot of favorites, and I think it gets a lot of crap. So again, to quote Mr. Superior, y'all are idiots if you think this album sucks compared to the rest of their albums, because it's an awesome record. That, I guess you'd say, like, my favorites, just looking at the track list again, because I don't know this stuff off the top of my head, just like drop of a hat. Immigrant Song, which isn't really acoustic, and Out on the Tiles are the two heavier tracks. And those are both sort of, you know, riffy, upbeat, energetic songs. But I would say also songs like Since I've Been Loving You, which is a great blues song. Second side has Gallows Pole, Tangerine. I was listening to that song frequently in high school, and That's the Way. That's the Way is the underrated track. A lot more people know Tangerine, but let's see here. Hats Off to Roy Harper. I think that's the last song. That's probably my least favorite and least memorable. If you played me 20 seconds of that song right now, or a song randomly and it happened to be that, I don't know if I could name it. Brownie Our Stomp, another song that was a grower. A lot of the songs on this album, like Friends, Celebration Day. I had a friend in high school, and we'd be in band, and he would start playing Celebration Day on guitar. This was an album that definitely grew. I think the first two records and some of the other records I enjoyed more initially, but other than the ones that use more electric guitar, I didn't necessarily find Led Zeppelin III right away to be as good. But songs like That's the Way, Tangerine, Out on the Tiles especially, well, I was saying that was the heavier one, but Out on the Tiles is another one. I remember talking to a guy at the store, and he said that Out on the Tiles is sort of the hidden track on that record. Gallows Pole also, which I think also references Lord of the Rings. So like Ramble On Led Zeppelin II, Gallows Pole I think is referencing something Tolkien if it's not Lord of the Rings. So of course that was 70, like I don't have the dates perfectly, and I like reading the dates on this. This doesn't even have the date. 70, it was 70, August of 70. So 71 I think, so they waited like a whole year. They're doing a lot of touring or whatever. With their most recognizable album to date still, of course, with a lot of the radio staples, Led Zeppelin IV, or Zoso, or Ruins, it's been named. Got a bunch of different names. And like Rush with like Moving Pictures, I kind of grew to sort of not get sick of this record, but some of the songs on this record I grew to get sick of. Granted, the record as a whole I still appreciate a lot. Did I just? Yeah, I just kind of I should be leaving it out if I remember every track. Let's just see here. I would just put this: the best songs on this record, "Battle of Evermore," amazing vocal harmonies. Sandy Denny, rest in peace. She was just awesome on that song. The harmonies with and that's another kind of Lord of the Rings Tolkien thing, I believe. Four Sticks. That's the other really hidden gem on this album on Led Zeppelin IV. I love the rhythms on that song. Love the kind of the vibe, the energetic vibe, the playfulness. And then I would say Golden California, underrated. And even though the classic rock will play that once in a while, it's a terrific ballad. It's not quite as good as something like Thank You, but I still like it. Now, Black Dog, Rock and Roll, the two songs I don't really necessarily need to hear again. So I knocked this album down to a point where those two tracks specifically, I've heard them way too many times. Misty Mountain Hop, When the Levee Breaks. When the Levee Breaks, I still enjoy. I think I love the kind of heavy psychedelic nature to it. Misty Mountain Hop, I used to love. When I first got into Zeppelin, that was one of my favorite songs. I remember hearing that on the radio. I was like, I want to get the album with Misty Mountain Hop. I like the lyrical element to it and sort of the different, the different verses. But as a whole, it just kind of has waned or wore on me. It's grated on me to a point. So I don't love it. I don't hate it as much as like Black Dog and Rock and Roll. And then, of course, Stairway to Heaven, which is obviously frequently been played to death by radio. We first had the trial recently with the band, with the song Saurus from Spirit. Not the same song, even though the acoustic part is similar. There were songs back in the 1600s that were similar. There was a song in the 50s that was similar. Someone also said that the Chim Chimney song from Mary Poppins is similar to Stairway to Heaven and Saurus. But that being said about Stairway to Heaven, I get goosebumps with it every time, and the times I've seen the tribute bands play it, I do too. The segue, the kind of build up, the way it's just composed, the lyrics almost to a point, it's a perfect track. And like Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, it actually was a point where the radio people, the record labels, pushed that song and they got it right. And the thing could be played, it's like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony or whatever. I think it should be played for 500 years from now, and it's a perfectly written song. It's not my favorite Zeppelin song, and I have heard it a lot, but it's one of those songs that's sort of timeless, and it stands the test of time. So that's part one of Led Zeppelin. Well, stay tuned for part two, and thanks for watching.